Okay, guys, today we are going to learn about the first two successful colonies in the New World called Jamestown and Plymouth. Once again, the expectation is that you will be filling in the blank with the Microsoft Word document associated with this PowerPoint slide. And once again, teachers, I will give you a little heads up if this is the end of the slide and you need to pause for students to catch up in filling in the blanks. But today we're going to talk about the first two colonies, which is like the first two settlements or towns created in the United States from European settlers from England, and Jamestown and Plymouth. So, so what is the object, or what are you going to be learning today? You will be able to identify how the colonies of Jamestown and Plymouth were similar and different. Okay, so we're going to decide if they are similar or different or both, and we're going to go through each colony. So we'll start with Jamestown. This will be the first colony in the New World. As you can see, it was kind of shaped like a triangle. This is probably made to defend themselves from Native Americans. As you can see, the fence around board. So what were the motivations for colonizing Jamestown? The main reason England wanted to find Jamestown is to find gold. Okay, this is a whole thing about getting money. If you remember about our three G's, God, glory, and gold, the whole motivation for Jamestown is to find gold. The point of finding Jamestown was not even to stay here. It was to go here, dig up all the gold, and then go home. It's important to note that England beats Spain and France to this part of what is now the United States. So they're going to kind of dominate that east coast of the United States. France will eventually take the inside part of the United States, actually like where Dubuque is, because they'll go up the Mississippi River. And Spain will take kind of like Florida and places like that. But for our learning, we're going to focus on England's colonies, and they start with Jamestown. Teachers, you can pause. So let's talk about the founding of Jamestown. Okay, it was founded in 1607. Okay, so the year 1607, and it was a joint stock company. A joint stock company is when people invest in something in order to try and get profits. So rich people in England paid men to come over to the New World, and if once those men found gold, the people that gave the funding or gave the money would get most of the money back. If you ever watched the show Shark Tank on TV, those are kind of like joint stock companies where Mark Cuban, who is a rich person, will invest in a company, a startup company, and once that company starts making money, then Mark Cuban gets paid. King James of England is going to say that they can go over to Jamestown, hence why it's called Jamestown. Once again, it's promised to find gold, and it's important to note that the king was in charge. Even though King James lived in England, far away from Jamestown, he still got to make the decisions and the rules for people to follow. Teachers, you can pause. When they get over to Jamestown right away, things do not go very good at all. The colonists are lazy. These are young men who probably have never really worked a day in their lives. They do not know how to build shelter. They do not know how to grow food to support themselves. And they end up having to rely on Native Americans to help support them with food. They treat the Native Americans with a lot of disrespect, and eventually their relationship with the Native Americans does not go very well. In fact, most people died in the first year. If you noticed on the last slide and this slide, if you've ever seen the Disney movie Pocahontas, it is loosely based off of Jamestown. Okay, so these people from England come over looking for gold, and then they don't get along with the Native Americans. Don't go home and say that Jamestown was based off of, or sorry, Pocahontas was based off of Jamestown, but it's loosely based off it. Teachers, you can pause. Eventually, Jamestown is going to become successful, and that's because of two guys named John. Okay, first of all, John Smith is going to take control of the colony. Okay, he's a very, very good leader. Okay, and he's going to run that colony so it's successful and it survives. He creates a policy saying no work, no eat. So these lazy colonists that came over thinking everything would be easy, and they don't have to work, they just rely on Native Americans and they'll get rich, blah, 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 blah. He's like, if you guys aren't going to work, you're not going to eat any of the food. So this is going to start to build a work ethic in those men. He also is very firm with his leadership, and gives direction during difficult early colonization. So John Smith is going to be the main leader of the colony, and he's going to help them through the early times. In the movie Pocahontas, John Smith marries Pocahontas. That actually did not happen. She married another John, and that guy's name is John Ralph at the bottom here. John Ralph, although won't be a big leader, is going to be the person that helps get Jamestown to be successful. They don't find gold like they wanted. So Jamestown was about to fail because they weren't making any money, and those people who invested their money at the beginning of this from England are getting upset and they're about ready just to cut their losses. John Ralph brings a little plant over to the New World called tobacco. In Virginia, they have a very humid climate, and it's kind of like swampy and wet, and tobacco really thrives in that environment. So John Ralph plants tobacco. Tobacco starts to grow really quickly. People in Europe love tobacco, so as this tobacco starts to grow, that colony of Jamestown starts to become very valuable, and it starts to make a lot of money. And because John Ralph planted tobacco, they will become a successful colony. Teachers, you can pause. In Jamestown, you're going to see two forms of government that are going to kind of inspire the United States as they start to develop their own country when they get rid of England in about 150, 200 years from their passing. So Virginia House of Burgesses, this is a group of people from Virginia that they are representing their towns and their communities. So as Jamestown starts as a small colony, people start moving and moving and moving, and they create a colony of Virginia. And the leaders from each of the towns in Virginia will meet and make decisions at the Virginia House of Burgesses. This is the first form of representative government. Okay, so the government is built up of representatives, are people from each town or city to represent them. So think of it this way. If you guys were sick of the cafeteria food, all the kids at Jefferson would not go to Principal Maloney's office and start arguing, we need more food, we need better food. Instead, each homeroom or success time would elect a representative, and those representatives would represent the school, and they would go talk to Mrs. Maloney. So instead of sending a whole bunch of kids, you have a small group of people representing the whole school, and they go talk to Mrs. Maloney. So the Virginia House of Burgesses is the first form of representative government in the United States. Teachers, you can pause. Now let's talk about Plymouth. Plymouth is going to be founded a little bit further north in Massachusetts. And the whole reason they come over is for religious freedom. In England at the time, you had to practice whatever the king said for religion. If you did not, you could be arrested, you could even be killed because you're not following the king's orders. So the main reason for people to come over to Plymouth is for religious freedom. The first people to come to Plymouth are called pilgrims. They wanted to completely separate from the Church of England. So they wanted to come over and create their own religion and be able to practice whatever they want, the idea of religious freedom. A short time after the Pilgrims came, a new group of people come over called the Puritans. And these are people who wanted to purify the Church of England. So they don't want to separate from the Church of England, but they want to make sure everyone follows the Church of England perfectly. They want to make sure it's pure. They want to reform the church. So these two groups of people come over because they're not happy with the way religion is being followed in England. Teachers, you can pause. The founding of Plymouth happened in 1620, so 13 years after Jamestown. Once again, it was because people wanted to separate from the Church of England. They're going to sign this thing called the Mayflower Compact, which we'll talk about. And once again, they were subject to the king, meaning the king was technically in charge, but the king allowed them to govern themselves and make their own kind of rules as long as if he was okay with it. Teachers, you can pause. Plymouth is going to have some difficulties right away. They arrive during wintertime. If you know what Massachusetts is like during winter, or Boston, it can be even more cold than Iowa. They get a lot of snow, and when you're not expecting that and you arrive in the middle of winter, you can't grow food or anything right away, so half the people are going to die. A difference from Plymouth than Jamestown is the Pilgrims really got along with the Native Americans. So since they got along and they helped each other out, the Native Americans taught the Pilgrims how to grow food, and that will help them eventually start to become successful. So what are some things that led Plymouth to be successful? The first thing we kind of already talked about is the Mayflower Compact. Okay, the Pilgrims came over on a ship called the Mayflower. Before the Pilgrims even got off the ship to settle in their new land, they created this compact, which is kind of like a contract. It's a set of laws that everyone in that colony had to follow. So this is kind of like the first Constitution of the United States. If you don't know what the Constitution is, it's the official law of the United States. The Mayflower Compact is going to be something that kind of inspires the Constitution. They are able to start to grow corn, and they are going to cooperate with the Native Americans or Indians right away. Teachers, you can pause. So once again, just going over the Mayflower Compact, this is the first form of self-government where a group of people created laws that the people of that place would follow. Now I want you to look at this picture right here. If you look at this picture, what do you notice about who's signing it or working on it? If you said that they're all white men, that is correct. So when it says self-government and represents everyone else, does everyone really have a say? Not really. If you look over in the right-hand corner, there's a woman. She has no say in what's going on. So when we say self-government or everything is equal, really at this time it's all about men. So in this PowerPoint, we learned about Jamestown and Plymouth. Key points on Jamestown is that it was founded for gold, but they were not successful because they could not find gold and they could not get along with Native Americans. John Smith would be a good leader for them, and then they will become rich because John Rolfe plants tobacco. We then talked about we talked about Plymouth, which was founded by Pilgrims for religious freedom. They're really known for having good relationships with the Native Americans, which helps them become good growers of crops to survive. And then they help us create the Mayflower Compact, which is the first form of self-government. That's it for today. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you. Bye.